All right, so here we are. We've got the 2014 versions of the Ducati Hypermotard SP and new to the scene, MV Agusta Rivale. Both very comparable bikes. Obviously, that's why we're testing against one another. But there are some very unique differences that we have found out. Troy, what are some of these differences?
We were talking about this earlier, how there really isn't a category for these two bikes. For a while, the Hypermotard was in a class of one, basically. This kind of sport bikey-ish, motardy type of bike that you really couldn't place in one area. And I guess Ducati's neighbors in Italy, MV, thought, hey, maybe that's a trend we should catch on to and build something around that. So here you have the Rivale. You could call it maybe sort of a copycat of the Hypermotard, but in its own little way, it's a bike that is completely worlds apart from that Hypermotard.
You know, some of the other styling cues between these two bikes, I mean, they both have a single-sided swing arm. You know, they both have the handguards with the integrated blinkers up front, but the MV, Troy, I think has gone over and above itself in terms of beauty.
If there's one thing Italians know how to do, it's design beautiful things. And the MV excels in that regard, especially this Rivale. I mean, starting up front, you've got these integrated daylights that go with the blinkers and the handguard, which to me is stunning. But more so, you go to the back of the bike and you got these taillights that to me are just absolutely amazing. They look so good. And then you got this like ghost rear hugger with the integrated turn signals on them. I think, Tom, you agree. Just the back of this MV looks incredible. And then go all the way forward to the front and the entire thing just ties together real well. Whereas the Duck, you know, it's good looking, but it pales in comparison to the MV.
No, the MV looks as good going as it does coming. You know, that front end is also amazing. The lines on it, you know, from the fender up through the stylized, you know, air intakes and the fuel tank.
When we talk about the MV, this 3-cylinder, 800cc gem, I think we can agree is an absolute blast. It revs so fast and it just sounds so sweet. I mean, it's hard to fault this thing now because, Tom,
of the fueling.
There you go.
The fueling on it, they've done a good job. Of course, you know, us, other magazines, we can complaining about this. MV's been aware of it, but they seem to have pretty much fixed the problem. Maybe for the guys that like to do the real long haul wheelies, they're going to find something to nitpick on it. But for the most part, for the average guy riding it around the street, I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find anything really to complain about with fueling. So, I mean, obviously we're dealing with, you know, two different engine configurations. We got the Tre Pistone over there with the MV.
3 cylinders, for those who don't know.
And the Due Pistone over here. All right, so V-twin and inline 3. Again, I think what we found, maybe you were alluding to earlier, Troy, is that, you know, this makes a really good street bike. For, say, the sport bike rider who's not ready to go full motard, the MV is kind of the way to go. If it's a dirt bike guy and he's kind of wanting to get into street bikes, he might feel more comfortable on this because it's maintaining more of that kind of, you know, dirt bike-ish motard stance. It's got the, you know, the higher rise fender. It's got the longer travel suspension. We got about 7 inches compared to 5. The MV's got, you know, pretty standard 5 inches of travel or so that, you know, a lot of street bikes have.
When you talk about the Hypermotard, you've got a bike that has been around a little bit now. I mean, this is the second iteration of the Hypermotard. The engine now is an 821cc liquid cooled, whereas previously they were both air-cooled versions. When you're comparing the two engines, it's kind of night and day, right? I mean, you've got this MV that's short-geared, really rev-happy, and just takes off, and this Ducati, it's kind of torquey, and it's really tall gearing. So when you come out of a corner and you get on it, this MV just shoots away, and the guy, the Ducati, is kind of waiting for the power to kick in, right?
Well, if you're riding, you know, if you're riding high in the revs, kind of almost Panigale-ish, you know, you can come out and, you know, whack the throttle, it's going to stay in the front of it. It's not like this is a laggard in any way, but compared to this 3-cylinder, and like we found out on the top end, I mean, that thing's got, you know, the top end of a more sport bike type setup where this guy sort of runs out of steam.
Yeah. So when you compare the engines, it's kind of a no-brainer. The MV takes the cake, especially now that the fueling issues have been solved. Thanks, MV. Apart from that, though, you've got two $15,000 bikes, but the MV offers the full electronics package, and we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, on the Ducati here, it's got kind of a dumbed down version compared to your Panigale electronic package. They both have traction control. The Duck does have ABS. That is the one thing right now that MV is lacking. It does not come with ABS yet, but it does have the full electronics package that the F3 has, where the Ducati has a race, wet, and sport mode, and that's pretty much it. Where the MV, you have the full customized mode. You can get there and change your engine braking, change your TC, change your throttle. So it's nice. You're actually getting, I think, a lot more bike with the MV.
Don't forget the quick shifter too.
And the quick shifter.
There's a lot to like about the MV. What I don't like are these foldable mirrors. They're kind of gimmicky now. They were kind of cool, and funny enough, the Ducati Hypermotard introduced them when their first iteration.
For us California people who are lane splitting, those don't help in any way.
Yeah, I tuck them in when I lane split, and then when you fold them back out again, they don't go back to where you had them before, so you always have to readjust them to make sure you can see behind you.
Well, when it comes to handling between the two motorcycles, I mean, they have a pretty similar, say, rake and trail, but the big difference, Troy, is we found out a 4-inch difference in wheelbase. Obviously, the Ducati is the longer one, and it doesn't take much, to feel that on the street. We didn't take these guys to the track, but, again, nice, stable handling Ducati, a little slower in the transitions, liquid fast, with the MV, but, a little bit more nervous, takes a little bit more getting used to, get confidence in that bike. But did you have a favorite between the two?
In a track environment, my answer might be different, but as far as street goes, I like them both for different reasons. And so I enjoyed the quick flickability of the MV, and I enjoyed the stability that the Duck gave me. So I can't pick a favorite as far as handling goes at the moment. That's one area where I think they're pretty even.
But another area, they both have, superb stopping power. The setup on the MVs, just a tad touchy. It's even with the very slightest one finger pressure, you get this initial bite that's just kind of disconcerting. I like the Ducati's front brakes better.
Yep, me too. I'd agree with that. I was thinking the exact same thing when I rode these. I was thinking back to our super middleweight test and how the MV was really grabby and aggressive, and the Ducati felt strong but progressive for my type of braking style.
So, Troy, earlier in our discussion, we were saying and commending, MV for really solving their fueling issue. But we found today that there's still a remaining fueling issue, which is
an incredibly small fuel tank, 3.4 gallons to be exact. Crazy, because if that doesn't make sense to you, our low fuel light came on at only 50 miles.
And this bike is out of gas right now.
As we speak to you, this moment, this has no gas in it.
Yeah, we're still 20 miles outside of town, and we have to go find gas now because we have 85 miles on the clock, and that's dead in the water.
There we go. So we were going to tell you a favorite that we like between the two, but we got to go back and tabulate now because we really aren't sure anymore. So
that's a huge factor. I mean, and of course, we've been wicking it up, riding hard all afternoon, so granted, you're going to get a little bit better mileage, but again.
Well, I've been riding this Rivale on the freeways and just regular around town stuff for a while now. I've been getting about 31 miles a gallon, getting a low fuel light coming on at about 70 miles in normal everyday riding, which is still pretty low.
You might make 100 miles out of that bike.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
So our next shootout is going to be the MV going up against the Zero then, right? I mean, doesn't the Zero have 75 mile range or something?
Yep. You stay tuned for our next gas versus electric shootout. You might be surprised. Okay, so I think we found things we love and things we don't love about both of these bikes, so we need to go back to our office, jot down our notes, tabulate some scores, so we'll have the full review ready for you at
Motorcycle.com. And MV, come pick up your bike.
Switch?
Okay.